Let's talk about freezing eggs. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show. News Talk 820 93.3 FM, WBAP. And this comes up because AOC has gone public about freezing her eggs. And this has been a hot topic online for about 8 different reasons. But before I spoil the pot here, let's go ahead and hear from her yourself.
My grand total personally for me, all in, is going to be probably between $8,000 to $9,000. The other piece of this is the actual clinic and procedure and your provider. And a lot of clinics actually don't require you to pay in a lump sum. I saved a long time for this. And so I'm just paying for it outright after years of saving. But there are clinics that do offer kind of a payment plan for people.
Okay. So we're gonna just jump right into this very touchy subject. Just take your shoes off and walk out in the mud with me. Because the fertility crisis is real. We are not making enough babies to maintain our population. And that really is everything. You can debate the nuances of how we've arranged our society and ways we could improve it and make it better. But we have made the most successful, affluent, prosperous, and free society the world has ever known. What good does it do if we go extinct in just a few generations? Wouldn't that be considered a failed society? Yeah, it's sort of like a genocide, but we do it to ourselves. It's a weird auto-genocide. We don't have a term for it yet. Because what is the term for the fertility crisis? Because you have the population boom. You have overpopulation. Have you ever heard anyone wonder or even show recognition of underpopulation? Population collapse, population decline. What's the word for it? So the fertility crisis is something that could be ameliorated or at least softened by science like this. Women are waiting longer to have babies than they have since your grandmother was born. And actually, there was a little dip down where before the post-World War II baby boom, the average age was higher. Then it went down for the baby boomers, and it's climbed up ever since. And it's way above where it was before the baby boom, just for context. But if we don't solve this, then we all go away. If we don't solve this, this is the same as being hit with nuclear bombs every day until we're just all gone. This is nuclear bomb level disaster happening right in front of our face. Now, you and I both know that it's not really that blanketed. It's not that there's a little more room for nuance because it's the AOCs of the world that aren't having babies. Me and Miss Parker had 4.
Hi, Miss Parker.
And in our community and the circles we run in our neighborhood, in our church, in our small town, that's normal. Good old Christians like to crank out kids. And I mean real Christians that actually, go to church and don't cuss Jesus not people that were just born into it. Active, practicing, religious people have way more kids than the ones who don't. And so who's really having kids and who's really not? And let's make some generalizations, understanding that they're imperfect. But Team Blue's the ones not having kids. Team Red's totally having kids. So in some instances, the people that are subscribing to a failed worldview, they're kind of taking themselves out. Isn't that kind of the definition of a failed worldview? If you die off, that's how we treat the polar bear population. If it was dying off, you'd be hearing the numbers and we say, oh, we got to do something to stop it. But the discussion about it, partially because it's AOC, but partially because it deserves it, has become incredibly political. Because AOC, after her announcement, because my heart bleeds for her, man, I hope she does get to have kids. I hope she does get to actually, whenever she decides I want to have kids, the science can still make that happen for her no matter how old she is, because it is a absolute blessing. It is way better than I thought it would be having kids. It's not nearly as scary. It's not like you're running around with a cinder block tied to your neck. But the negativity that's surrounding this is what we're going to talk about.
Not long ago in my life, I was working as a waitress in downtown Manhattan, and that, like, the thought of that was so paralyzing. And then when you actually pair that with all of the horrible rhetoric that we as women are fed as a society about our fertility, etc., it's easy to feel frozen and like a failure, right? Like if I either can't afford this, or if I can't afford it, then I'm going to have a negative consequence. And I want to push back on that real quick. Number one, there is so much negative messaging that is directed towards women around our family choices. Period. Kind of no matter what choice you make, if you have kids, when you have kids, whatever, there's so much negativity. And it is designed to dysregulate women, to put us in a place of fear or insecurity so that we are making choices out of that place. We're not doing that. All of these men, oftentimes, who are saying, oh, if you haven't had a kid by 30, like you're done, it's just not supported.
All right, this is what we have to talk about, because that's not what I'm hearing. That's not what you're hearing. How can you talk about the declining fertility of women as they age without it being called hateful or negative? Is there some way you can do this? Because I asked this question too, like when we talk about race. How can you talk about race crime statistic, the disparities, without being called a racist? Just tell me how to do it and I'll do it. Because I can promise AOC and everyone listening to this show that the concern about women delaying having kids or deciding to not have kids at all is not coming from a place of hate. Not wanting your own population to genocide itself is not a hateful thought. Aren't you the hateful ones? Because the innate prime directive of every living thing that has ever existed on Earth, it's all built into everyone's DNA, all the way down to the amoeba, is what? Propagation of the species. And if you're fighting against and resisting the most primal instinct that is shared by all living things, you're the one who is going against the grain. You're the one who is fighting against nature. You're the one who is acting in a quite irrational, and again, not to be hyperbolic, but sort of auto-genocidal behavior pattern. But we got to talk about this, because I totally support her doing that. If you're thinking about it, I totally support you doing that. But I think this is a touchy subject because it implies that a mistake or a shortcoming has already been made. And I don't think that's fair, and we'll talk about that next. But have you gone through this? Are you thinking about going through this? What do you think about AOC freezing her eggs? I'd love for some women to chime in. Guys, this is not for you. Don't really care. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on Newstalk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. AOC's freezing her eggs. We have a fertility crisis at large. There's a connection here. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. Donald Trump's coming to town. He'll be here on September 10th for the Republican midterm convention, which is September 9th and 10th. And when those 2 days are happening, just turn it on WBAP. Put it in your brain right now when it's September 9th and 10th to first place you check in when you're listening to the radio right here. But this story is based on AOC's freezing her eggs. And there's a lot of conversation to be had here. Number one is, I'm so glad that this technology exists. Whatever technology we can have that gives the most amount of people the chance to become parents, to become a mother, to become a father, I celebrate that. For those of you, or for those of us who have kids, I think every single person you talk to will say it's pretty much the best blessing they've ever had. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to them. You know, for you people that are wandering around aimlessly and don't know what to do with your life, have a kid. For the next 18 years, you'll have a purpose. That's for damn sure. Probably for the next 25 years or so. But part of us also, your heart bleeds a little bit because we've seen other people go through this. She is doing what she was trained to do. She has been taught her entire life that family isn't a big deal. Mary Tyler Moore said that you really can have it all. You can go out and you can be just as educated and powerful and successful and wealthy as your male counterparts. And there's no sacrifice to be made. You can have it all. And the real world says, no, you can't. At some point, if you want to have a baby, you have to recognize the clock is ticking, and that's not a mean thing to say. But it really has gotten political. And there is one party, they won't admit it, but they are anti-family. They want you to do anything but get married to the person that you love, settle down and have kids in a loving family. Why? Because you're going to end up voting for Republicans if you do. What do they need you? Maybe you could just cut it off, or maybe you could just do gay stuff, or maybe you could do serial promiscuity. Definitely don't get married. And look, if you do have kids, ditch your spouse. You can get all kinds of goodies. You can get Section 8. You can get welfare. You can get food stamps. You can get all kinds of free daycare. And we'll just keep inventing programs, free libraries and swimming pools on the public dime. Every program that they have from the social order seems to separate families, don't they? And if there's any doubt, here's The View back in March of this year, responding to CPAC, a conservative political action conference that was actually here in Dallas, encouraging people to start families. They are against people starting families.
I don't even know how to explain this story, but I'm going to tell you what happened. The Conservative Political Action Conference, known as CPAC, wrapped up this weekend, and conservative activist Isabel Brown had a message for her fellow Gen Z women, who reportedly are the least likely group in America to get married and have kids.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start. It is these choices, like deleting our dating apps and quitting birth control pills and saying I do at the altar, that ultimately trickle down into the political policies that we will see save our country.
I think it's just really reckless to be suggesting that people should have children when you now know in this country there's this affordability crisis, and for a two-person household, a married household, you need over $400,000 for childcare. Over $400,000. Most people don't make over $400,000. So she's advocating for people to be born into poverty, people not being able to feed those children, people not being able to educate those children, and people not being able to house those children at the same time when this government is cutting all of the services that would allow people to have families and big families and children.
Yeah, without all the government services, how on earth could you raise a kid? Oh, I don't know. Maybe for all of human history up until LBJ, that's how people raise their kids. They were all poorer than we are now. There's 7,000 years of recorded human history, and 99.9% of the human beings that have populated Earth during that time were born in a lower standard of living than the poverty-stricken people of America today, who they're trying to discourage from having kids. Not only is it possible to have kids for less than $400,000. It's the most normal thing in the world. In fact, it's the exception that someone's born into that level of affluence. That's happened for almost nobody. Not only are you lying, like 99, you were poorer than that. Your parents were poorer than that. Your grandparents were poorer than that. You saw through all of American history, the pictures of people in the 1800s when they first developed cameras and everything's in black and white, and they're wearing the same set of overalls that they've had on for the past 4 days. They don't even have shoes. They have dirt floors. They don't have air conditioning. Don't even have a beeper, much less Netflix. And what did they do? They cranked out 14 kids. Your grandparents probably cranked out 12 kids. And what were they doing? Just working the fields? Slopping the hogs? Or were they living a life of decadence? Oh, yes, let's put another hot tub out by the gazebo. This anti-family stuff is going to end our society. And that's not me being hyperbolic. That is math. So it's amazing how the family has become a political football. But I'll show you how this is extrapolating itself out into the current election season next on The James Show. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. If you've frozen your eggs and you've gone through that experience, did it work? I'd like to hear from you, 800-288-9227, because I'm actually pretty sympathetic toward AOC's plight here. I hope she does get to experience the joy of motherhood and starting a family. If you're just joining us, it's come up because she's announced over the weekend she's going to be freezing her eggs.
My grand total personally for me, all in, is going to be probably between $8,000 to $9,000. The other piece of this is the actual clinic and procedure and your provider. And a lot of clinics actually don't require you to pay in a lump sum. I saved a long time for this. And so I'm just paying for it outright after years of saving. But there are clinics that do offer kind of a payment plan for people.
All right, so I talked about the familial and biological parts of this. Let's talk about the political message here. I think this means she's 100% running for president in 2028. Because listen, we have the midterms that's happening in November. The second that's over, the second we have all the votes counted and we know what's done with that, it is the presidential election cycle again. We will be 1 year away from the presidential primary elections then. And so people are going to start campaigning. They're going to be declaring. They're going to be raising money. They're going to start having rallies. They're going to be on TV. It's going to be debated. There's going to be town halls. It's going to be all over the place. And she wants to get this sorted out before that starts at the end of this year. The timing is pretty obvious here. She's 37, though. So give it a couple years. We'll actually have the election. She'll be 39. When she gets out of office, she'll be what, 44 after the first term? If she makes it through two terms, what, 48? Depends on when her birthday is, but probably around 48. If she wants to be a mother then, she going to be able to unfreeze those eggs and make it happen? You know, I've really softened up on this. I used to be more critical of people who have a kid too late in life. Like, it's kind of gross when Larry King has a kid at 81 or whatever that is. And it's been a problem that's exclusive to men, right? You shouldn't be having a kid when you're in your 80s. I'm all for procreating and being a family. But when you have a kid that late, you're not going to be there for your kid. You're not even going to be there when he graduates high school. That's not really fair to your kid. You're not going to be there for your grandkids. And don't be selfish. That who cares if you get to meet your grandkids? Your grandkids don't get to meet you. Your grandkids don't get to know who their grandfather was. You're cutting off just the possibility of them having a layered family, multi-generational family experience. And that's not really fair. Now we're pushing women up into that. But I've really softened on that, the older women get, because number one, as old as they are, they're not having kids in their 80s. But also, we're living longer. If we're going to live to age 120, who cares if you have kids when you're 60? If we're going to be living to age 120, then you will get to know your grandkids, and your grandkids will get to know you. You know, you might be wearing like one of those space suits from the Jetsons floating around your flying car. But as longevity expands, as our fertility rate declines, as our native-born population declines, I'm just all for this in any facet whatsoever. And I think this was sort of a tongue-in-cheek joke, but also kind of true. Jay had sent in a Facebook message on the last break that said, while I would absolutely love to, you know what, do we really want AOC procreating? I see what you're saying there. Do we want, her making more liberals or more people who we're going to have to fight against in the future on the other side of the Civil War? Is that what you're saying? No, I think it's a good thing. I think the number one thing that drives women from being young and liberal into older and conservative is the whole family formation and creation and procreation and marriage. Because women vote overwhelmingly Democrat when they're single. Not so much when they're married with children. When they're married with children, in fact, that's the only demographic of women that actually votes Republican. So best of luck, AOC. I've seen people go through the extreme regret where they bought into the lie that they don't need to worry about having a kid, or that's too hard, or that's too expensive. It'll cost $400,000 or whatever the geniuses, the brain trust on The View was saying. Because look, our daughters are being fed with this whole thing. It's so hard. It's so much. We have an affordability crisis. Are you kidding? It's been easier to afford kids than all of human history. But like, there was another story just, I think this was from this morning.
While more than 40% of American adults are concerned about being able to afford food over the next few months. That's up from 24% in April. Researchers with AP and NORC say it's starting to change consumer behavior in day-to-day life.
People feel like they can't do very much about prices.
Oh, stop that. I can't stand this. We're not victims. We're the most affluent, soft, coddled, luxurious generation in all of human history. Yes, even if you're poor. If you're sitting in air conditioning right now, you have more luxuries than kings had until 100 years ago. It is easier than ever to have kids. If you have any doubt in your mind on whether or not you should have a kid, if you're in a loving, stable marriage, have him. Have 2. Have 10. If I'd have met Miss Parker sooner, we'd have had 10. She's just lucky I didn't meet her until I was 30. But you know what? This is one of the self-correcting problems out there. Don't listen to me. Don't have kids. Just auto-genocide yourself. And those of us who aren't scared of having babies or scared of being families, we're going to be left to inherit the world when y'all are all gone. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, abortion news. Oh, yeah. It's not going to get ugly. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. So Massachusetts just signed a new law allowing abortion up till the moment of birth. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. You know, this is a topic where I catch a lot of my Team Blue friends. Because a lot of people think, well, I'm pro-life or I'm pro-choice, and that's just period, point blank, end of story, and they never really put a whole lot of thought into it. And because the general consensus is abortion bad for one team, the other consensus is abortion good. But there's only about 9% of America that believes in what just became law in Massachusetts, and that is abortion up until the moment of birth. And I know this is a gross subject. I'm only going to talk about it for one segment. So don't worry, I'll just make this quick because it's going to dovetail quickly into the next segment. But here's how I catch people. You're pro-choice? Really? 100% pro-choice? Yeah? All right, so what if 1 minute before a baby is born, full-term baby, in fact, it's like a few days late even. What if 1 minute before it was born, I just popped it with an ice pick and killed it? Yeah, are you okay with that? And they're like, well, that doesn't happen. Well, are you okay with it? Well, that's not what the majority, like 99% of abortions aren't that. Okay, but what about the 1% that are? What if it's on the way out and the second before it actually comes into this world, you kill it? Because that was legal. And you've heard the horror stories. Kermit Gosnell's the greatest serial killer in American history. Killed over 250 babies like that. And almost nobody, even on Team Blue, is for that. And once you can get them to admit at least some gray area in the abortion situation, now you can have a debate. And a lot of people are scared to do this. You don't hear people talk about it on the radio very much because you're going to tick off half of the audience. Well, you know what? That's okay. I'm going to tick off the people who are 100% for abortion and the people who are 100% against it. And I'm not too concerned about those fringes because they only make up about 20% of the population. The other 80% lives in this gray area in the middle. Because on the other side of the spectrum, the people who don't believe in any abortion whatsoever, the 100% pro-lifers, they're out there. I believe Ted Cruz might be one. Then you would be against if you think life begins at fertilization, conception, implantation. These are all different stances that play themselves out with different policy preferences in the real world. And the most extreme pro-life position is you're not cool with in vitro fertilization. Why? Because you're going to create embryos that would otherwise be destroyed, and that counts as murder. Wow. That means you would be against abortion even in the cases of rape or incest. Wow. That's a pretty far stance that even most Republicans don't take. And so this law that just got signed in by the governor of Massachusetts is so far to the left, there's not a position further left than that on abortion. That is wild that a policy preference that is popular with only 9% of the population can somehow become law. It can pass both chambers of the state, House and Senate. They're bicameral in Massachusetts. The governor can sign it. It can sit there and it can be celebrated. That is so crazy. Because it's another stance where it's like anything but have a family, anything but have just a normal, heterosexual, fertile, nuclear family. And I get it. These family units that are full of love and self-sustaining, they don't need government programs. They don't need politicians. They can put their own food on the table. They don't need food stamps. They don't need public schools. They can pay for their own kids' tuition. They don't need your health care subsidies or CHIP or Obamacare because dad can cover that too. That's dad's job. They don't need public transportation because that's dad's job. Dad can buy mom a car or dad can take you in his truck. They don't need all the handouts. They don't need all the help. They don't need all the programs. They don't need any of it. They don't need politicians. And so if you want to be a tyrant, if you want to control the people, the one thing you can't let them be is independent. And the number one thing you can do to keep people dependent on your government programs is to make sure they don't start a family. Yeah, if you're going to have babies, don't have it with the husband. Just have it be some rando. It's just, I find this so bizarre how something like that can pass. But this is all going to dovetail into the poll where I think it's time to start looking at these polls. But the fauci betting line is what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at polls like Rasmussen, or Pew, or Gallup. I'm looking at what the people who are putting their money on. Okay, the number one 2028 presidential winner, the biggest odds go to J.D. Vance. There's an 18% chance, according to how people are spending their money, that he's going to win. Number two, Marco Rubio, 15% chance. And then at third place, you get your first Democrat candidate, John Ossoff. He's like the senator from Alabama or Georgia. I think it's Georgia. But he's third. Gavin Newsom, fourth. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is fifth, but she's within 3 points of third place. She is right there at the top of the heap with these other three guys. And then Kamala Harris is right behind her, then Ron DeSantis, then Mark Kelly, and then everyone else is under 3%. That's what this is all about. That's what the freezing eggs is about. That's what the abortion talk is about. It's all looking at 2028 thus far. Jason in Flower Mound, you're on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
Yeah, on the abortion issue, for the abortionists, I would ask them a very simple set of questions. First of all, does that have hands like you? Does it have feet like you? Heartbeat? Does it have brain waves? Does that look like a lump of flesh to you?
Well, I know what they would say because I've had this conversation 1,000 times. The day after the fertilization happens, no, they don't have hands. No, they don't have eyeballs. No, they don't have brain waves, and they don't have a heartbeat.
Well, they would say that, but they can't say at term or in the third term.
Oh, of course not.
They can't. They're going to have a problem with that.
Of course not. No, and I like the ability that most of us have. Listen, the reason we don't talk about this in the media very much is because 20% of the population is going to lose their mind, send hate mail to our bosses, and try and get us fired, whether we're pro-life or pro-choice. But there are a lot of people, like, do you know what the quickening is, Jason? When it comes to pregnancy, the quickening?
I understand that if I remember correctly, it has to do with how rapidly how the fetus develops very rapidly.
So it's a term that they used to use in medieval times. I haven't really heard it used. I've only read it in like other books and stuff. Quickening is when the mom can feel the baby kick for the first time. That's what the quickening is. And so they used to have abortion laws set up in some medieval jurisdictions where you could have an abortion up to the point of the quickening. And I read I think it was an Anglican thesis from some dude in 400 years ago that actually approved of an abortion up to the point of the quickening. And abortions used to be something that were a little more often than we would think because they knew how to do it by semi-poisoning yourself. But also there was a whole bunch of rampant diseases and crazy things that would happen to people when they were pregnant. Like if you got rubella, you don't know anyone who's had rubella. Trina, you know anyone who's had rubella in your entire life? Yeah, we don't know either. But if in the medieval times you got rubella when you were pregnant, your baby was going to be born deaf, blind, and severely mentally retarded. So they would give you a break on that. I don't know how they knew what was rubella. It's not like they had all kinds of science and tests to check it out. But the discussion on this is a lot more gray area and a lot more fluid than a bunch of people give you credit for. And don't be scared to have that conversation. All right, coming up next, we're going to continue handicapping the 2028 presidential election. And then also the city of Dallas is discussing their budget proposal, and it's more corrupt than you could possibly expect. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey homeowners, James Parker here for Blue Ribbon Roofing. Blue Ribbon Roofing is who you call if you have any doubts about your roof because you've gone through some terrible storms. Now we're going through the other part that's hard on your roof that you don't see. When it's going to be extremely dry, when it's going to get above 100 degrees for like 8 days in a row. This is taking all the stuff that contracted when it was super cold in January. Remember when we got the snow that was on the ground for about 4 days? Well, this is the opposite of that, where it's pushing it all apart. This is where the cracks are made. This is where the compromises come from. Unless it's like a direct strike from a tree branch or hail, this is the most dangerous weather for your roof. So if you see any leaking, you suspect anything, you see the just a little bit of gap opening up between the flashing and the chimney, call Blue Ribbon Roofing, come out because the inspection doesn't cost you anything. You just want to catch it as soon as you can, and we'll work out how to pay for it and work out with the insurance company can cover for you. But let's make sure we get that done as soon as possible. Go to blueribbondfw.com. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM. WBAP. I'm your host, James Parker. I know. Good to see you, too. Good to see you. I know. Listen, we were just talking about the opening landscape for the 2028 elections. And I realize that is, sort of doing the trap game where, hey, don't focus too much on 2028. We're not even done with the midterms yet. Well, Donald Trump was asked about the midterms yesterday, and I really liked the advice that he was giving for the midterms. And then it sort of devolved into a string, like just not a string of pearls, a string of insults. But we'll do the advice first, because the best part about the GOP running the midterms isn't the GOP, it's Team Blue.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Mr. President. What recommendations do you have for Republicans, heading into midterms right now? And are Democrats, with the candidates they're putting forward, making life easier for them?
Well, the one thing is we have jihadists being elected all over the place. We have this, whether it's communism, jihadism. It's a friend of mine called up. He said, really, you should use the word jihadist, because that's what's happening. And I'm not sure that anybody, if you take a look at what happens in other countries, I think that's not going to be necessarily the way we want to live. But when you look at the radicalism and the craziness of the candidates and the stupidity of what they're suggesting, let's get rid of the Supreme Court, let's get rid of the presidency, let's get rid of...
Yeah, and in fact, there's a lot of weird things that they've been standing for. So this Francesca Hong, she doesn't like Thanksgiving, and that's not me making fun of her. Like, she will openly say this in interviews.
Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities. And so I think I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are multiple views, but views can evolve.
Yeah, there's also posts of her griping about seeing Christmas decorations at work, because separation of church and state, I guess, or maybe heteronormative Christian supremacy or nationalism. I don't know. But these people's worldview has made them miserable. Like, what holiday do you like? They don't like Valentine's because it's capitalism exploiting love. They don't like Christmas because it's Christian. They don't like Thanksgiving because we're a bunch of colonizing, genociding white supremacists. They don't like Halloween because every other costume is appropriating someone else's culture, and it's so and so thing. Like, what do you like? Labor Day? Oh, yeah, you like Labor Day. You don't like the 4th of July because worst country ever. I got it. So it's almost hard to be hyperbolic about these people. So now let's go back to Trump and his second soundbite, where this is where it just devolved into just a series of burns.
These are people that have been not successful. They're people that have been, in many cases, failures. They come from other failed countries, and they come here and they tell us how to run our country. They come from places like, I won't mention because I don't want to get myself into a controversy.
He'll mention it.
They come from countries that are not great. They come from, let's say, as an example, Somalia.
Told you.
They come in and then they tell us how our Constitution, how our Declaration of Independence, how it works. It doesn't work that way, and they're not smart. They have no aptitude. They have nothing going, and they're telling us how to run our country. And I just don't think it's going to happen. I think that they start off, now I may be wrong, but they start off with a big disadvantage. People don't want to have radical lunatics involved in running our country. And
so I have a couple of examples of people on Team Blue who are not down with all this either. Let's start with James Carville. These DSA candidates, he calls them a stupid idea generator.
Look, I think that the progressive left, they're very tech people. I think they've come up with an AI random stupid idea generator. And I think the stupid idea generator can think of things that humans can't, like canceling Thanksgiving or being against interracial dating. So I'm just waiting to the next stupid idea AI generator that comes out, spits out of that. It'll probably go through the humanities faculty at the University of Wisconsin before it actually gets put in a candidate's hand.
James Carville on Fox News, absolutely backhanding DSA Democrat candidates. What the hell's going on? And then you have another lifelong Democrat, liberal, progressive activist, Bill Maher. He's not a big fan of this new DSA slate of socialists either.
Democrats have found a candidate who hates Thanksgiving. Although far lefties hate Halloween. Costumes that are inappropriate, oh please. This woman doesn't like Valentine's Day, another way of capitalism taking over our love life. She said, Valentine's Day, the holiday that brings out the worst of humanity. That's the holiday that brings out the worst of humanity? Have you ever been to a Black Friday sale?
All right, my mind's kind of blown. The Democrats candidates that are surging and pretty much taking over Team Blue are not loved by traditional Democrat activists. This is going to be an interesting election season. And 2028 is where the real party is going to happen. Coming up next, you're going to meet a young man who wrote a book. It was about Lyme disease, but it also kind of fits in with the research of viruses and gain of function and what's going on with Fauci and COVID and all that. Because it's been suspected that was COVID created with your tax money? Was Lyme disease and RSV, was that created with your tax money? We'll talk about that next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Did you create COVID with your own dollars? I mean, I know you didn't in a lab, but did you fund it? I'm James Parker. This is The James Show on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. This is tied in with a book from my next guest. Adam Finnegan wrote a book called The Sleeper Agent, The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. First off, welcome to The James Show. And I have heard tale that Lyme disease also created in a lab, RSV also created in a lab, and the claim has been made that this was done all under the umbrella, the tutelage of Anthony Fauci, and all done with U.S. taxpayer dollars. So we've been at this for over 50 years. What was the technology like for the beginning of this? Interesting. What were they doing? Just like hitting it with gamma rays and hoping it would mutate, or? Yeah, you said passageways. I don't know. I don't know what that means. What do you mean by animal passageways? So you've gone through some of Dr. Anthony Fauci's COVID aired emails, text messages, the interviews, recorded conversations. What have you found that isn't being discussed by the outside world? Hang on. Tap the brakes. Adam Finnegan is our guest. He wrote a book about disease, Lyme disease, chronic illness called the sleeper agent. There's a herpes strain called the Epstein. Oh, okay. Because I was about to say that's too golden. I was thinking there was. Well, that really sucks for everyone named Epstein these days, doesn't it? All right, please continue. You just caught me off guard there. All right. This has been Adam Finnegan. If you like what you hear, you might want to check out his book, The Sleeper Agent: The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. Be in touch. If you find out anything else in those text messages and emails and stuff that you want the outside world to know, I'd happy to be your conduit, Adam. Thank you, sir. All right, coming up next, we're going to continue talking on this Fauci topic here. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, homeowners. James Parker here for Rhino Shield. When it's time to give your house a makeover, don't make the same mistake that caused you to be in this position to begin with. Don't use paint. Use Rhino Shield. The whole reason you need a makeover is because that paint, it looks bad. It's starting to crack and peel and kind of curl up at the edges. And if you want to take care of this and then never have to worry about it again, you use Rhino Shield. Plus, it does a lot of things paint can't. It helps insulate your home, blocks UV rays. But really, it's just because it looks good. That's good enough reason there. If you're worried about the price, stop. They can put it on a low monthly payment, so it's actually easier to afford than paint, and it's better than paint. So there's no excuse. Have them come out, show you how the technology works. You'll get a little demonstration. They'll give you an estimate. And if you like what you hear, go forward from there. Go to rhinoshielddfw.com. All right, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. Yeah, so Fauci. Did you know the story we talked about yesterday? It broke right before the James Show started, and it really drove about the first hour of the show yesterday, and that was the fact that some old Fauci texts had been uncovered where he admitted that there was some risk for pregnant women in taking the vaccine. Now, this shouldn't be like a big shocker. This fits in with the narrative that he lied about the transmissibility, about the hospitalizations, about the deaths from the vaccine. He lied about that every step of the way. He lied about the therapeutics that could have treated COVID without the vaccine, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. So you and I aren't very surprised about that. But also yesterday, Trump came out, signed an executive order reducing the vaccine schedule, slowing it down, taking it down from 18 to, I believe it was 10. Anyway, let's get a quick summary from WFAA so I don't butcher this too bad.
Administration facing mixed reaction also this morning after the president signed an executive order revising federal childhood vaccine recommendations.
Now, the administration says the changes give parents more choice, but some medical groups warn this could leave your child vulnerable to preventable diseases.
Natalie Haddad is in the newsroom with what parents need to know this morning and how these changes could affect their children. Good morning to you, Natalie.
Good morning. President Trump's new executive order takes aim at how childhood vaccines are given, pushing his long-held view that shots should be spread out over more doctors' visits. One of the biggest changes he's calling for involves the MMR vaccine, which protects against measles, mumps, and rubella in a single shot. Trump wants those three vaccines offered separately, an option that is not currently available in the United States. The order also calls for more vaccine research and encourages childhood shots to be given at separate appointments when available. Now, the president's order puts vaccines back at the center of his health agenda after recent focus on healthy eating, lower drug prices, and medical fraud. The current childhood vaccine schedule, including which shots can safely be given together, is based on years of research and ongoing safety monitoring. Public health experts warn spacing out shots could leave children unprotected for longer. Even Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, a doctor himself, disagrees with the president's approach. However, Trump called the order a, quote, major victory for parents' rights and what he calls, quote, gold standard science. It's worth noting this executive order does not automatically change school vaccine requirements. Those are set by the states individually. The White House is instead encouraging states with school vaccine mandates to consider changing their laws to align with the administration's preferred schedule.
All right, so that is a great rundown from Natalie Haddad. Here's the deal. Which doctors are saying what? Because if it was the doctors that got everything wrong about COVID the first time around, I don't give a damn what they say about vaccines for the rest of my life. And the fact that some people are vaccine skeptics, I'm surprised it's not more. I'm surprised anyone listens to any doctor on a TV after this. I mean, after this week. And here's the frustrating part. I have a guest coming on in about 20 minutes or so from Newsbusters who's going to tell you that the number one story that we had on the show yesterday, our top story, was the uncovered text from Fauci saying he knew that there was risk for pregnant women. It wasn't reported on the network news last night. ABC, NBC, CBS, they didn't even touch the story. They didn't even dare to tell you. And when I make posts about Fauci, you know, I like to share like little highlights and clips on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all the things. And there are people under there who are like, you're just making stuff up. Fauci's a national hero. Fauci saved lives. This is more disinformation. There are people who don't even know the truth yet. But the other thing I have for you that'll fill out our top story from yesterday, Fauci's text messages. Since I did that yesterday, there were people who went and they dug through hours and hours of interviews and videos of Fauci from 5 years ago. And someone found this gem. It wasn't the day he sent the text message about the knowing that there were some problems with pregnant women taking the COVID vaccine. One of these clips was from a day after. Another one was from that weekend. So the same week of the text message, these two clips.
Thus far, with thousands of people women who are pregnant having gotten the vaccine following the EUA. There have been no red flags of anything that anyone would be worried about. There are severe adverse outcomes for mother and baby during COVID-19 infection. Therefore, it is extremely important for pregnant women and women planning to get pregnant to get vaccinated.
Man, I don't care if it kills your baby. The important thing is we got to get this vaccine out. We've got to mandate it. We've got to cram it down everyone's throat. We've got to print $6 trillion and let the politicians hand it out to their preferred winners. Babies were sacrificed on the altar of science, so a lot of people could gain money and power from the COVID lies, and half of America still believes the lie. Wow. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, we're going to talk about some local news. This whole Dallas budget thing is more shady than it is normally. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. All right, let's check out how bad this Dallas city budget thing is. I know it's not a real sexy topic. It's not like abortion or freezing your eggs or, socialists being silly. But if you're wondering where all your tax money's going, this is it. WFAA did a great summary this morning.
Dallas leaders are considering its proposed budget right now. It would include several cuts to close a $50 million budget shortfall. Thank you for joining us this midday. I'm Kara Sewell. The plan would include cutting 300 jobs, nearly 300 jobs. And Natalie Haddad joining us in the newsroom with what leaders have discussed so far. There is a lot to unpack.
A lot to unpack. Dallas is facing a budget shortfall, as we've mentioned, and residents could feel the impact through fewer hours and programs at places like libraries and recreation centers. Right now, Dallas City Council is getting a closer look at the proposed budget for next year as we speak, and where the city plans to cut costs. The proposed $5.6 billion budget would be the largest in Dallas history, but city leaders are still looking for ways to close a projected $51 million shortfall. The plan calls for eliminating nearly 300 positions, though many of those positions are vacant. It also calls for reorganizing departments and potentially shifting some city services to private companies. And those job cuts and restructuring alone are expected to save about $17 million.
Regrettably, despite the efforts, this budget does impact our workforce. And I understand that this news brings uncertainty. And what I want you to hear from me is that I care deeply about each of you.
Additionally, the proposal would reduce hours and programs at some libraries and other facilities, lower the minimum hourly wage for some custodial and temporary workers, also eliminate a healthcare copay program for city employees. And while the proposed property tax rate would drop slightly, some city service fees could go up. City leaders say growing pension payments and rising costs for police, fire, and other services are putting more pressure on this budget. City Council still meeting and discussing the proposal again as we speak. This is not the final budget. Council members can still make changes before a final vote scheduled for September 16th.
All right, so whenever the bond appears on your ballot, number one, if it is going to appear on your ballot, say no. Just, can we make the default position on all bonds that you're allowed to vote on? Just make your default position no. Because what they're really asking, do you want to raise your own taxes? They just passed a couple of giant bonds last November. So what are we doing here? We can't balance the budget. We can't stop taking on new debt. We can't make any cuts. And we don't have a whole lot of people in city council even trying or talking about it or even taking it serious. Did you know that there's a Dallas version of Doge? There's a Department of Government Efficiency-esque project that's going on in City Hall right now. And they actually had to report back to the City Hall earlier this week. I didn't get this guy's name, but this was being passed around. The HR offices in the city, do you know they're empty? Because this is coming up because hundreds and hundreds of new staff members have been added to the departments at City Hall over the last 6 to 10 years. And the city hasn't grown. The city hasn't gotten significantly bigger. We haven't added any geography. We didn't annex any suburbs. So why do we get almost a 50% increase in the number of full-time employees in City Hall? And what does that mean if we have almost 50% more employees in City Hall over the last few years, but the offices are remaining empty? What's really going on?
To discuss further, I've been down to human resource a few times. Not a lot, but a few. And I went down there, to be honest with you, because Chairman Mendelson said no one is at work. So I actually went down there a few times. And guess what? One at work. And then I sat here and listened to the HR director advocate and say, we need to give incentives for people to not come to work and pretty much work on the COVID schedule. That was concerning to me. So I'm putting it in my words, but that's pretty much what you said. If you go look at the video, it's out there. Her words was an incentive when you're hiring people. So when I'm looking at the job responsibility and what we're expecting, my personal view, and just me, I'm 1 out of 15. I believe people should come to work.
That seems like a no-brainer. He mentioned in there, Kara Mendelson had told him that many of the departments have empty offices. This was her in a different city council hearing this week.
So that was something that just sort of came naturally, that hybrid approach.
Every time I've been to your department, not a single person's been there. I'm just going to tell you that's the truth.
I did not know that you had ever visited us.
I know, because you weren't there.
I know you weren't there. How would you know if I came to visit? You weren't there. Your staff isn't there. We have a whole, what is that, the data collection department? Do we even really need that? Come to work. Make them all come to work tomorrow. Fire half of them and tell the rest of them to figure it out. The idea that we can't cut the budget in Dallas City Hall, well, you have the largest amount of revenue the city's ever had. It can't keep growing forever. I bet you I could find some things to cut. I would cut all them damn libraries. I would cut out all the DART. I'd cut out all the social programs, all the theaters, all the WNBA practice facilities, all the renovations, the convention center. We wouldn't be doing any of that garbage. I could cut that thing by 75%, and y'all wouldn't even notice. Gary in Granbury, you're on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP.
Yeah, this isn't only a Dallas problem. This is a United States problem.
Amen.
If you look, like the average, you could take the average number of houses in any county and look at the bond issues, and I will guarantee you the average house has between $250,000 and $500,000 worth of bonds against each property. So you will never own your home. You will be a slave. There is no such thing as home ownership as long as we have property taxes. We need to go to a sales tax. And the other thing is, if you look what's happening in the bond market, a lot of these municipalities and these school districts and these independent school districts with all these bond issues, they're going to go flat broke. And when they do, you've not seen economic pain because all your pensioners are holding these worthless bonds for crap that we didn't need. I'll give you an example.
Well, I've got 20 seconds.
Okay, if you look, like there's some schools out in West Texas that have 134 different students only.
Uh-huh.
They've got a $10 million stadium. They've got 15 golf simulators. They got a baseball stadium that'll hold more people than 5 of.
Yeah, that's my 20 seconds, Gary. That's Gary and Granbury. I wish I had more time because I really like where that was going. Because that's what I say all the time. Great call. That's Gary. Coming up next, Curtis Houck from Newsbusters. Are the media outlets refusing to cover the Fauci text? Are they refusing to cover the fraud that has been uncovered in D.C.? I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. So if a COVID lie is exposed, but no one reports on it, does it make a noise or something like that? I'm James Parker. It's the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. And I have, look, our top story yesterday, the thing that I thought was the biggest story for you was the revelation that Anthony Fauci had some text messages admitting that he knew the vaccine could cause trouble for pregnant women. And then days after that, he's saying, no, it's totally safe. Let's mandate this thing and cram it down everyone's throat. So he's killing babies, basically, for this lie. It got exposed. We don't know how many women lost their pregnancy. We don't know how many people suffered or miscarriages or birth defects or premature or something. We don't know even what the effect was. Sad part is this is what the conversation sounded like on ABC, NBC, and CBS last night. They didn't report on it. And I saw that on Newsbusters this morning. I was like, well, that's pretty bad. Maybe they'll catch on. Well, Newsbusters did an update for us, and the morning shows on ABC, NBC, CBS didn't bring it up either. What the heck's going on? Well, my next guest is coming from Newsbusters, and he's going to probably not have any much better answers for us. Curtis Houck, welcome to the James Show, sir.
Yeah, good to be back with you. I'll do my best.
Well, Newsbusters does a great job documenting how disappointing and dishonest the media is, because the biggest lies they tell are the lies of omission, Curtis.
Oh, yeah, that is absolutely correct. I mean, I think, you can get kind of lost in the bombastic, the incendiary statements from podcasters and liberal journalists out there and kind of lose the fact that, well, it's not as sexy because there's not as much to peel back the layers of an onion. Bias by omission is definitely one of the oldest and the most insidious form of liberal media bias. The MRC's been around since 1987, and a lot of things have changed, but stories of bias by omission, that is one of the few things that has not changed. And we certainly have a humdinger here, as you note. Just for the record, of course, our friends at Fox, Fox Business, Newsmax 1, Newsmax 2, OAN, NTD, News Nation, all had stories over the last 24 plus hours, even CNN. Now, of course, CNN covered it to kind of knock it all down and basically suggest there's no there. But the point is, made the airwaves that CNN decided that we are going to spend time on this thing, even if they think it's stupid. That is something that the broadcast networks could not do.
Well, it's unfortunate because the people who need to hear this the most are the people who still believe the lies. People who still believe Anthony Fauci was a good guy. People, because I posted about this last week, some of the Anthony Fauci lies, and people were in the comment section going, Anthony Fauci saved millions. Anthony Fauci's a national treasure. Anthony Fauci's a hero. It's like, oh my God, they don't know, Curtis.
At its most generous, though, he was completely inept. At its most generous. And when it comes to public health, being inept is pretty bad too. Inept or criminal, neither is a really good answer to that. And the thing that I just found really disappointing is the fact that the broadcast networks on their websites, on their streaming platforms, on their middle of the night shows that only, speaking of, young mothers and fathers are probably awake seeing it like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. They're the only shows mentioning it on these broadcast networks. So these newsrooms are aware of this thing that's happening, but they're not actually showing on the main shows, the ones that are clipped and posted on social media platforms. Because here's the thing, even though fewer and fewer Americans are watching these shows, World News Tonight, Good Morning America, The Today Show, etc., a lot of the social media clips you see on your Instagram feed, folks, or on YouTube, they are clips from these legacy newscasts. Okay, so that is why those shows still matter. So if it's not covered, it can't be clipped and posted to the social media platforms. Barry Weiss's CBS, there's a lot being made about Barry Weiss, and it's MAGA TV, as some of the people say out there.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm here to tell you, yes, last week when Senator Johnson's team obtained Fauci's cell phone, they covered it twice. Great, right? Well, it's kind of a two-part story here. You cover when they got the phone saying, oh my gosh, they got his phone. We're going to find out what he was saying on his iPhone during the pandemic. But then part two then is you have to say, because now Senator Johnson is actually saying what he's finding on the cell phone. You kind of need to do that too. 50% success rate, last I checked, that is still a failing grade.
Well, also on Newsbusters, ABC, NBC, CBS, they didn't mention the 160 billion or whatever in fraud payments that the White House task force had saved Americans. That was just from a few days ago. And something else cool that y'all studied here. I love it when y'all do this. Apple and Google have their own news service that if you search up Ken Paxton, the first 4 articles you're going to get are negative about him. But if you search up Graham Plattner or El Sayed, the socialists who are running for Senate in Maine and what's the other one, Michigan, nothing bad comes up about them, even though they both have plenty of controversies that could make the top list.
Well, or Anthony Fauci, we have a story out today. It's the same story when it comes to the text messages that are not being carried as well. If you're Apple and Google News and MSN, those kind of sites, we're not. If you're listening to this show, you're not part of the problem. Your friends and family who, kind of saying, "Oh, I don't like the news. I don't have time for the news." They're probably getting their news from these outlets. Every Android phone has Google News. Every Apple phone has Apple News, whether you want it or not. And what these these outlets do is they aggregate stories from the New York Times, the Guardian, even Al Jazeera, the Washington Post, ABC, News.com, the AP, etc. So the same liberal stories that you're seeing are simply cross-posted with the little Google moniker logo, and same with Apple. And people think, oh my gosh, it's from Apple. It must be trustworthy. No, it's the same stuff that's being cranked out, that has been cranked out for generations at places like the New York Times, are simply being posted elsewhere so that these networks can stay relevant, be part of their search engine. They have content agreements so they can continue to make money. These networks are doing things instead. I talked about this in my Fauci tech story. Instead of fraud, today, Good Morning America had like a taste test. There's a new flavor. There's reblended 7-Up. And, there's like mixed drinks with Red Bull coming to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you do those in the second hour of a show when you have celebrity interviews or cooking segments. No, you had to do this in the first hour of the show when it's typically supposed to be hard news. And so to all this, I just say, what are we doing here?
No kidding. All right. Well, we could do this every day. I really appreciate you guys' website. Curtis Houp, thank you, sir. Newsbusters.org. I go there every day for James Show prep. If you want to keep track of the media, I recommend it too. It's just amazing to see what they don't report on. Good stuff. Newsbusters.org. Coming up next, I might have to watch the WNBA this season, or I guess next season. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. If you're listening right now and pain is holding you back from doing anything, I want you to at least consider QC Kinetics. Now, I'm not promising it is going to solve all your problems because it doesn't work for everyone, but about 70% or so of the people who come in for the free consultation go ahead and move forward with treatment. And look, that's a ballpark number, but that's kind of like what I expect for you. There's about a 70% or so chance that if you're having some chronic pain issues, it could be in your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your back. Mine was my back. QC Kinetics might be able to help you out. And I would love to hear that you got your quality of life back from this new space age technology that only comes from QC Kinetics. I don't think they're competing with anybody else on this, and the consultation doesn't cost you anything. So if you want to get some of that quality of life back, if you want to be more active, if you want to do the things you used to do, get back to playing golf or tennis or hiking or roping cows in the backyard, Start by calling QC Kinetics and do the free consultation. 972-972-8610. Call QC Kinetics at 972-972-8610. Man, I'm really enjoying this WNBA situation. This is so great. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Remember, Donald Trump's coming to town September 10th. September 9th and 10th are the Republican midterm convention here at the American Airlines Center, downtown Dallas. We will be in the building. I mean, technically we're on the property already, but we will be where the actual convention is happening in the next building over during those 2 days. So on September 9th and 10th, WBAP, just lock it in. All right, so this WNBA story just keeps getting better and better because when the whole trans thing sort of popped off years ago, I think the era started when Bruce became Caitlyn. Can we all agree with that? Does that sound? We just got to put a boundary. We've got to delineate somewhere. Because for all of your life, up until the last few years, no one claimed men can change into women and women can change into men and men can have babies and a lot of stuff that's very mainstream now. There were no elected Democrats that were saying that in the 90s or in the early 2000s. But somehow the Overton window has shifted. And this is something that you can't lose this argument. This isn't an issue that's going to be a problem for very long, because you and I both thought when we saw the transition from whenever the Caitlyn Jenner transition happened to we got to this point today in the WNBA situation, you and I both knew this entire time this whole narrative can just be flipped over if one guy decides to declare as a woman that, a former NBA player decides to declare as a woman, or it could be someone who's just really good in college, or hell, it could really just be maybe most athletic guys in their 20s, most basketball males in their 20s. If one guy just decides to take advantage of the very generous and well-intended policies of the WNBA, well, then this whole thing's going to be thrown on its head. The whole idea that there's no biological noticeable real difference. Gender is just a social construct. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah. So I think part of the reason I enjoy this and you enjoy this so much is this was wholly predictable and foreseen. And you knew this was going to happen on a long enough time scale. You were just waiting for it to reach ahead. Here we are. Inez Freedom and Royce White have both declared for the WNBA draft. Here's Royce.
Right now, I'm just having a blast in my feminine era. I never thought that I was a woman.
Oh, stop it. All right. All right. Now, let's fast forward to the new part today. The back and forth on this is real interesting because the people I am playing for you are not right-wingers. These are people within the left wing. They are within the superset of Team Blue. I'm going to start with Stephen A. Smith. Who's saying, listen, this whole thing that's going on right now, this is not hatred. This is not an anti-trans move. This is people just playing by the rules that you claim to support.
So you see what Enes Kanter had to say, right? You see how much of a mess this is becoming, right? And everybody want to act like, oh my goodness, we don't want to hate on trans. We don't want to hate on trans folks. That's not what that's about. Anybody who's hating on them should be ashamed of themselves. The WNBA, the NBA, and everybody else in between is absolutely right where they talk about not violating people's civil rights and liberties, not being hateful, not engaging in hate in any way, shape, form, or fashion, whether verbally, physically, or otherwise. We all know that. But what Enes Kanter is pointing to is about competition. So for somebody to transition from male to female, and for folks to act like it would be okay for them to participate in the WNBA is ridiculous. And when you have athletes from the WNBA saying that they're looking out for and speaking up on behalf of girls, because it would clearly be an unfair advantage to a trans athlete over people born female, what's the problem? What's the problem? We got to have common sense. And yes, Enes Kanter is going a bit too far, but he's right to do so to make a point. And Royce White, former NBA player, now a conservative pundit, he's right too because he's trying to make a point. Certain things are beyond ridiculous, and you got to call it out just to send the message. Do you get it now? Are you sure you want to continue this subject? Are you sure you want to continue on this path? Sure you don't want to be political pawns? Fine. Then understand that the WNBA is for girls and people born female and leave it at that. And stop acting like you don't know. Otherwise, there'll be a lot more Enes Kanters.
And the thing that makes all of us just want to pound our head against a brick wall is if it's all a social construct, if it doesn't matter and you're all open and welcoming to anybody, then why does the WNBA exist? Why is it even a thing? Coming up next, you're going to hear from some recent NBA players and a former NFLer, professional athletes and their reaction to this WNBA controversy of sorts. Do you think this is really going to happen? Do you think they're really going to let these two guys suit up? I say absolutely not, and I'll explain next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I'm going to let you hear some reaction to the WNBA controversy from people besides me. I'm James Parker. You're listening to The James Show on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Good, proper Texas football fans will most certainly remember the name Emmanuel Acho. He was a guy that actually went to high school here in the Dallas area, in Dallas. And then he had an amazing career with the Texas Longhorns. And then he did a few years in the NFL. I don't remember much of his name being called in the NFL. But he's a smart fella, too. He was one of these guys that was like a first-team all-academic selection 3 times. So it's awesome to see when guys like that have a leg injury and they get blown out of the NFL, that they turn and they do broadcasting. Because some of these guys are smart. The stereotype of the big dumb jock, there's a ring of truth into that. But there's some exceptional brains that break the trend. Like Richard Sherman, remember that guy? Went to Stanford. He's hilarious on a microphone. He's no dummy. So when he talks about very sensitive topics like this that are kind of abrasive to the wrong people, kind of political, kind of sports, I thought you would like hearing his reaction to what's going on with the WNBA and the trans stuff. But before we get to that, let me play you a couple other guys that you probably heard of as well. Stephen A. Smith was making the case that his stance on the WNBA allowing trans players doesn't come from a place of hatred. Let me do a funny one before I do the serious one. Lonzo Ball and another guy I didn't recognize. Professional basketball players who were having the discussion, at what age, like how far back could you go and you would still be better than WNBA players? Of course, because of course they're better than WNBA players now. They're professional basketball players. What about when they were in college? What about when they were in high school? What about when they were a freshman in high school? What about when they were in 8th grade? So check this out. Lonzo Ball and other guy.
And I mean this as respectfully as possible. But 9th grade Lonzo Ball in the WNBA is going crazy. All right. Because look, in 9th grade, I'm over 6 feet and I'm dunking. Like, I'm coming through no girl in the WNBA is doing that. I'm going back door, throw it up. Like, I'm looking like Jordan out there. So I'm going to just say, and I mean this so respectfully.
So great senior.
Middle school down, I give it to the WNBA.
I'm gonna go probably 8th grade, because look, bro, I have real experience doing this because I played. My sisters went to University of Missouri, and I was still a young dude, and they had me playing like on the scout team, and they had a few WNBA players on the team, like Sophie Cunningham and a couple others, and I think I was like in the 7th or 8th grade going dumb. I'm talking about like, so I have real life experience.
It's not physically fair, bro.
It's just a difference, man, and I wish this would stop being a conversation because it should be common sense. But like, it's just not. But I appreciate, common sense. I feel like sometimes that's lost a little bit.
Okay, now that we have the cloud of all this around, all this sensitivity, all this social justice, all this wokeism, remember in the background, the Caitlin Clark controversy is still a vital part of that context. Now, that is a racism issue, not a trans issue, not an LGBT rainbow flag attack. This is a racism issue. So very sensitive subjects over here. And, as much as we talk about the WNBA, it's never about basketball. But in the latest of that context, because these topics are all getting mixed together. And what we're really turning into is how woke can this league be without running off half its fans? So Emmanuel Acho was talking about a lady named Carrington who did a flagrant foul against Sophie Cunningham, the tall blonde girl that did the pointing meme. You've seen the 1,000 Sophie Cunningham pointing memes. I love that one. Well, there's a flagrant foul done on her where she was going up for a layup. She was going to make it. And instead of giving her the easy layup, it's not crazy to foul somebody, but you have to make it look like you're going for the ball. You can't smack them in the face. And if you do just not even try and go for the ball and you just explicitly smack somebody in the face, if they start bleeding out of their mouth, it's pretty reasonable you're going to get a flagrant. In fact, you're going to get the ejection level of flagrant foul, and that's what happened. She immediately went to the locker room and tweeted out, white privilege. And you're going to love Emmanuel Acho's response to that.
Dejanay Carrington made a basketball play, and the refs made a basketball ruling. So can we stick to basketball for a moment? Basketball play. She was attempting to go for the ball. At least she said so. She missed, and she missed egregiously. She missed, and she flagrantly hit Sophie Cunningham in the head. Now, flagrant 2, by definition, if you hit somebody with so much force that it could lead to injury, and if it doesn't appear to be a play on the ball. Though Dejanay's intention was to play the ball, her impact was all on Sophie Cunningham's head. So as a result, the refs made the right call. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, have we seen Sophie Cunningham aggressively foul an individual before and not get thrown out of the game? Sure. Have we seen Caitlin Clark aggressively foul an individual by hitting them in the head and not get out of the game? Absolutely. You cannot be ignorant to that truth. But if we are paying attention to what Dejanay Carrington did to Sophie Cunningham, it was not a race-based decision. And to call that a white privilege-based foul is to completely undermine the term of white privilege and to also completely ignore the rules in basketball. You hit her in the head, you drew blood, you didn't connect with the ball at all whatsoever. So to me, it was just very ignorant and to some degree asinine by Dejanay Carrington to suggest that that call was based on white privilege. Have we seen examples of white players make that same foul and get away with it? Yes. Have we seen examples of black players make that same foul and get away with it? Yes. There was no white privilege involved in that specific call. Dejanay, you hit her in the head and you drew blood. It was a flagrant 2. You should have been ejected. No more, no less.
I'm really starting to like that guy. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Isn't it crazy that the WNBA has all these controversies, all these non-basketball controversies? Does the NBA? What's the NBA's biggest controversy right now? Analytics, too many three-pointers, too many dunks, not enough mid-range shots. They're not talking about trans. They're not talking about gays. They're not talking about race. They're not smacking each other in the face and drawing blood and accusing. It's fantastic to watch, isn't it? Aren't you kind of enjoying this maybe a little too much? Coming up next, some wisdom in the form of comedy from Ronald Reagan. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Ugh. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. You know, we spent all of World War II fighting the fascists and the socialists. We spent the entire Cold War fighting against communism and socialism. And now the emergent, almost dominant faction of one of our two major parties is the socialist. That almost sounds like a joke or a setup, but we've got them. We've got them. We've got Francesca Hong, who's anti-Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities. And so, I think I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are multiple views, but views can evolve.
Yeah, if Thanksgiving's painful for you, newsflash, your family sucks. How about that? Everyone else enjoys it. Hey, how about we set aside a day to give thanks for the abundance that God has given us? They're like, no, that sounds terrible. No. Sounds a little too capitalist, colonial, white supremacist to me. You have El Sayed, who is the Democrat nominee, just won his primary against a very funny Haley Stevens. I wish she was going to stick around with us. He's a out-and-out Islamist. He's like Mamdani, a socialist Islamist. Like one of the worst forms of governance, it would be an Islamic theocracy based on socialism. It's what they have in Iran right now. That's what he wants for us. And I'm telling you that it's not me being hyperbolic. But he has the problem of a whole lifetime of social media posts where he's just hating on. This guy does not like Jews. There are so many anti-Israel posts. There are so many free Palestine posts. There are so many pro-Gaza and pro-Hamas posts. Any rational person would come away from that hellscape of a social media timeline and be like, man, this fellow might be just a little bit anti-Semitic. Well, he's got to win an election, and that's not going to work. So check out this interview he did over the weekend. Listen to this attempt to draw a line, to bifurcate this very obvious issue here. He's going to say at the same time, he loves Jews. He just hates Israel. You see the difference? Israel bad. Jews good. Israel bad. Yes, he loves Jews. It's just the only state that is Jewish he hates. Yes, the people that are committing the genocide against the Palestinians. Yes, he loves those. This doesn't make any sense, but God, I enjoy watching this.
I love and revere Judaism and the Jewish people. I believe they're a light unto the world. I grew up in a community that had a large Jewish population. I was so grateful to get to be invited to Seder and to Shul and to Bar and Bat mitzvahs. I'm really honored for what I learned and got to share with my Jewish sisters and brothers. But they are not the same as AIPAC in Israel. AIPAC is an organization that spent, $30 million to beat me so that they could have one more vote in the U.S. Senate to guarantee that our taxpayer dollars would be sent abroad to subsidize a foreign government's military to do the worst things: genocide, apartheid, take us into wars we have no business fighting.
Yeah, the people that are committing a genocide and apartheid, yeah, I absolutely love them. Does that make any sense? No. No, it doesn't. You have the co-chair of the DSA having an economics discussion. So they hate Thanksgiving, they hate Israel, they hate the Jews, and they want to tax the hell out of the rich. What does that mean? I don't know. You just have to engender hatred toward a group of people based solely on their success in order for the government to have permission from the electorate to go steal from them, I think is as deep as the thought process goes.
But we do believe in taxing the hell out of millionaires. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what does taxing the hell out of them mean?
Yeah, I don't have like a solid, but I think.
But shouldn't you? I mean, if you're the co-chair of the DSA, shouldn't you be more specific than just taxing the hell out of something? What exactly do you mean?
So again, it's democracy, right? And we have to look at what we need to spend and what we need. We don't want to depend on the existence of millionaires because that means people are still getting exploited. So yeah, we need to look at what we need to pay for in the interim, what sort of tax base we need for that to happen, and then and build from there.
Yes. We don't think millionaires should exist, but we want our entire revenue stream of taxation to be based on them. Again, it's the snake eating its own tail. And I think this only works or primarily works on younger people because you and I grew up in a time where all of these people had all of their ideas actually in power and it was called the Soviet Union, and we saw how terrible it worked. Ronald Reagan had a great joke that made a good point.
And only 1 out of 7 families in the Soviet Union own automobiles. There's a 10-year wait. And you go through quite a process when you're ready to buy, and then you put up the money in advance. And this happened to a fella, and this is their story that they tell, this joke, that this man, he laid down his money, and then the fella that was in charge said to him, okay, come back in 10 years and get your car. And he said, morning or afternoon? And the fellow behind the counter said, well, 10 years from now, what difference does it make? And he said, well, the plumber's coming in the morning.
Zach Bryan is coming to AT&T Stadium August 22nd. Special guest Ryan Bingham and the Texas Gentlemen. Get tickets at zachbryan.com, or you can listen to the WBAP morning show all week to find out how you can win a pair of tickets from them. All right, that's going to about do it for the James Show today. If you need more James Show action, go find the James Show podcast. And also, if you see any of my videos and clips and highlights and social media posts, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, hit share. Help me spread the message there. And then also, if you don't mind getting into the fight in the comment section, that's always fun. And you might get read on the show. So go find the James Show and all the good little clips I have on social media as well. Stay put. The great one, Mark Levin's coming up next. I'm James Parker, and this has been the James Show on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP.